Good evening, everybody. I call to order our joint session of the Board of Commissioners and County Council. We have a quorum because here in the Nat U Hill Room, you have myself, Councilor Crossley, Councilor Wiltz, Councilor Fido, Councilor Deckard. I'm not certain if I see Councilor Hawk virtual, and I know Councilor Henry and Councilor Iverson could not attend tonight, so we are good on County Council side.
All right, and I'm going to call to order the Board of Commissioners. Commissioner Madeira and Julie Thomas, myself, are present here in the Nat U Hill Room.
All right, now that we are in order here, I kind of want to go back to our last conversation. I was kind of looking at our notes from, and I might look at my council members here to kind of help me out with our notes. To kind of recap our conversation that we had the last time, we had the questions that the commissioners had put together for us, and we had a discussion on that. And then from that, we had the dry erase boards. It looked like they're back again. And so our next steps were some other items that we were looking for. And I believe it was Councilor Iverson that was looking for, it was, what was it, Councilor?
Timeline.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of that. And it was something else that he was asking about related to, oh man, I'm having a brain fart. Something that was asked last February. I'm looking at my council members. It was something that he was asking about in terms of, like cost. Oh, dang it. Nobody else. What was it?
Was it how much we could bond for? I know he
Okay.
asked that several times.
I know. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it was
And
probably
so
that.
that was a conversation. And so I don't know, Commissioner Thomas, if you have an answer or if council attorneys or county attorneys have an answer to that.
I think Mr. Cockrell can address that
Okay.
issue.
Appreciate
And again, and apologies to everyone, it's a little dark in here because since the power outage, there's something going on with the light switch. So,
helps my headache.
Yes, and I'm going to answer that question two different ways. And I'm going to preface the answer with everything's pending state legislation, right? So at this point, in 2028, the county council would have the ability to spend everything it's spending right now out of lit and do the bond at the level that we were anticipating and still have around a 0.2 of the percentage left of the innkeeper's tax. So what you're currently spending now is about 0.61.
not innkeepers.
Lit, sorry. 0.6.
I know.
0.61% of income tax is what you're spending this year, what appropriated this year. What gets spent gets spent. And then we had calculated about a 0.4 to do the full bond for the North Park facility, that amount. So in 2028, as it currently sits, you'll be able to go up to 1.2 million or 1.2%. So that would be above what you're currently collecting, and that could pay for both the current what you currently have budgeted and anything else. Currently, you can't bond really for anything at all because there's a 25% cap, and that cap basically ends next year. So you could basically bond for your revenue for this year and next year. So you really can't do a whole lot of bonding. You do have the option of not bonding and paying out of cash. I think we had I want to say over 30 million in our edit tax fund. And we're anticipating collecting another substantial amount this year. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. So short term, not a lot of capacity to bond, but once that legislation gets in place, you do have it pending state doing something else.
Yeah, Councilor Decker.
Yeah, and I guess this question would go to Mr. Cockrell or whoever would be appropriate to answer it. because ultimately that bonding amount dictates financially whatever that percentage equates to. That dictates the amount of dollars that you're able to get towards either constitutional care or anything else for that matter. And at one point, someone said that would be you could bond for up to 19 million a year. Am I misremembering that, or do we know that amount?
Oh, the bond per year for the $225 million project, if you didn't use any cash, bonded the full 225 was about 18 million a year.
And I forgot to mention, Commissioner Thomas, we are also joined by some of the Board of Judges that we have here, as well as the sheriff and staff too. So I just wanted to say that for record. Okay. Anybody else that wanted to add anything or have any questions? Councilor Wiltz?
Can you speculate? I know you love doing that, but could you speculate on the potential impact of municipalities claiming some of the tax rate, because that's at least been suggested and I know is being lobbied for?
I think that I've seen a Senate bill that I think has been taken off, but some of those provisions may find its way somewhere else. So if and that proposal had that 1 point due going down to 0.7 for the county as a general thing, but it also has, and I didn't talk about it with the other because that had they call it the small towns tax. This still has the small towns tax, but it says you don't have, that the county gets to keep it all, right? And so and that would be 1.9% on, up to 1.9% on everybody that doesn't live in corporate limits. I've got no idea what that number will be. I don't know how you divvied that up, but my guess is it would be more than enough to cover the cost. But then you've got there's philosophical issues with that.
And one other thing, I just wanted to confirm that this is the case. There is an active bill right now to postpone the lit changes for a year. Is that correct?
Till 2029.
We could be looking at the limbo lasting until 2029. Is that right? Okay.
So there's also legislation which will remove that annual requirement for renewing a bond on a lit. That's also, it's a hodgepodge right now at the State House.
I'm sorry for this question, but I offer it to try to move us towards what we can do, because we're under a tremendous deadline made by all these circumstances and not made easier by legislation in limbo, and of course our own work. But if we think back to the previous, I know we keep hearing the 225 estimate, but if we think back to the amount that was apportioned or offered in the DLZ proposal for just a jail portion of this, I'm trying to take numbers and go from what the legislature's currently saying you can do. We think 18 million a year, what we need to have towards a constitutional full care jail. I'm trying to figure out that number, those years, and what our most immediate thing is. Do you know the amount that would be apportioned from that original proposal just for roughly the jail end of it?
I don't know exactly. If I had to guess, educated guess, it'd probably be 150 million, somewhere in that neighborhood.
So from the 225-ish down to about 150 for the jail portion.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, and along those lines, if that is just something, and I hear now my brain is starting to come back to me. One of the other conversations that we've had at the last meeting, and it's been brought up several times, is, as we all know right now, we currently have a justice building that is composed of courts and jail. And so if there is the jail component only as of right now, not saying, please don't anybody at me, just speaking hypothetically speaking. But if we do something like that, then I guess I'll look to you or DLZ or somebody to tell us what those operational costs would be, because obviously everybody is concerned of what it would cost in terms of transporting inmates back and forth, all of those different things. Does that cost, like, we need to know that cost as well?
I agree. We would very much, I think, benefit if we understood those operational costs, even if it's just for a period of time until we co-locate, or more likely as we look at building just the jail portion, which again, not sure if that's what we're talking about fully, but we would still have court facilities with the jail. Not all of them necessarily, but there would have to be some partial co-location. And I think, in my vast experience in both architecture and being in the justice system, lots of sarcasm.
Yeah, no, the plan would be to have the jail, and if we were not immediately co-located, we would have to have some courtroom facilities, but I don't think it would be sufficient to cover every single criminal case. So it would be maybe a hearing room, maybe 1 or 2 courtrooms. I don't know. Depends on the cost. To add that in, which would alleviate some of the security issues. I would just ask that, since the council is the fiduciary body, if you want to look at those operational expenses, I think that would be a great thing to work on next. And that would include not just personnel, but vehicles, time, the cost of time, and the additional personnel, vehicles, ways to stay safe. I know the sheriff could tell me 100 things I'm missing on that list right now. If we had to do that, but if we are not co-located, then that means we've got people commuting between a justice building, prosecutor, public defender, probation, of course the judges, clerk. They would be commuting between 2 buildings, and there's a cost there, and I don't know what that is. But that would be something that would be worth assessing, I think, as part of this as well. Not just moving inmates, because that would, of course, have to happen to some extent. Not necessarily every inmate would have to be moved, but that commuting cost is time and money, and I don't know what that is either. So I think that would be a good thing to look at.
And I want to, Judge Stafford had her hand up.
Thank you. Judge Catherine Stafford. I certainly can't speak for the entire Board of Judges, but the last time the Board of Judges discussed the issue of whether some courtrooms could be located at a separate jail, we were firmly against it. And the reason for that is that all of our support staff are located in one location, and we can't have some courts in a different location and some courts at the original location, because we don't have our court administration there. We don't have our court reporters there. We don't have our recording equipment there. The cost of duplicating all of that would be extremely expensive. Until I'm told otherwise by the Board of Judges, I don't believe that having some courtrooms in one place and some courtrooms in another place is feasible.
There's a secondary question here as well, which goes to the question of co-location. If there's a planned permanent non-co-location, meaning down the road there will always be a jail that is not connected with the current Zitlow Justice Center, then one of the things that we know is that it would take about $15,000 for us to get a construction estimate to make the Zitlow Justice Center a viable court and office space in a way that it is not now. In other words, HVAC, plumbing, wiring, and dealing, which would eliminate the mold issues and all of that. So that's something that we can bring to the council if you all want an estimate on what it would cost. This is not to refurbish the jail at all. This is not to have the jail there. There would certainly have to be holding cells. If courts continue to operate, criminal courts will continue to operate out of that building. And if that's a long-term thing, then we're going to have to look at that. So no, I absolutely hear that. I would prefer we're co-located. I don't know, that's, and to me, that and a single floor jail are the two most important things we can do right now. And there may be ways we can do that, and I don't want to talk about tea leaves and what the legislature may or may not do, but we can figure that part out. But we need to know if we're on the same page regarding single floor co-location. And I think that's an important thing that's still on the table.
Yes, thank you.
Go for it.
Because I agree with you, Commissioner Thomas, that co-location and single floor are priorities. And I would throw in there a downtown location because I look at these as priorities. There is, at this point in my mind, there are very few things that are absolute hills to die on, so to speak, except the money. And so, I mean, it's really unfortunate, but I maintain the same list of priorities that I've been told by people who know more than I do about what you all do. And I will try to find a solution, but we can't fund everything we want. We know that. So some aspects of some of these priorities might have to change. And I don't know what that is, and I'm not trying to be threatening. And if I'm wrong, I hope I'm wrong. I hope we can get it all pulled together in some way I haven't thought of yet. I really do, because I share those priorities. I do.
Yeah. If I might, I just wonder if Mr. Cockrell can speak to what we can and cannot afford. Taking legislative limitations, hurdles, obstacles, barriers, cement walls off the table, can we, Monroe County, afford to do this project? And what is that based on?
Well, I think that we can certainly afford the land based on what the current edit fund is. I think the construction phase currently could not start until 2028, and in absence legislative changes, either pro or con to that. So I think at that point, if it remains to 1.2%, I think you have adequate room to fund the project. And then it's up to the question of whether that's appropriate or not.
Based on local income tax anticipated funding.
The current lit, we collect about a 0.8 of current lit. We're currently spending 3/4 of what we collect, so it's about 0.6. And we would be able to grow that 0.8 collection to 1.2, and that 0.4 will cover the expenses of the bond payment if we borrowed $225 million, which again, I'm not sure that we'd have to borrow that much because of our cash on hand and things like that.
That assumes raising the lit for our community. So just to be clear, we're talking, when you say, we collect and we utilize and all that, I just want to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing, which is raising taxes. Now, granted, that's the expectation that's being given to us by the state. The way they're putting things in place right now, the expectation is that we are raising income taxes for those who live in our community. And we would be making a choice then to utilize a lot of that extra taxation to fund the jail project. And that's where I start to get very uncomfortable about what are we giving up in opportunities to fund things that our community needs. And I recognize our community is not being sued over our unhoused population or the mental health services that we don't provide. We're being sued over the jail. So I recognize the urgency, and I understand that we are going to have to fund it, but I just want to make it clear that that is what we're talking about, is asking our community to pay more money to build a big jail. It's a tough thing to sell.
And when you say it out loud like that, that's really like hard to swallow. I get it, and I know there might be some people that might go, but there's other costs that are associated. I get that. I completely understand that. But when we talk about this economy and this day and age, when everything is stacked up against the regular Joe Schmoes that are out there, it just feels to do something like that. And I'll keep saying it until my whole face turns red like my lipstick. And I understand that we are in this, but at the same time, I think we have to figure out what is the crux of this whole conversation, and it is the jail. Of course, we have all the wants and the desires. I personally would love to make sure that we can continue to keep it downtown, because hey, if we just have a jail and operational costs mean that, and things are walking distance and people can do all of those things, great. I'm just trying to think about how we can do things outside the box, but it feels like oftentimes, and I get everybody's concerns, we as the council, we have a big job, and to already go out, and we already raised taxes once on people to afford this. And now to go back out again to ask for more money from people who are already strapped when they're not making as much, they don't have affordable housing, they don't have all of the things that we have here. That just seems like a hard ask to sell to our county residents. Trent. I'm sorry, Councilor Decker.
I think
I'm happy to defer.
Judge had her hand up first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see it. I'm so sorry.
And I recognize I'm not necessarily.
No. It's
somebody who-
okay. It's okay. And so I'll go Judge Stafford, and then I'll go to Councilor Decker next.
I certainly am not here to comment on the council's position on raising taxes or not. I have no vote on that. But I would say that it's not just to build a big jail. What we need is a jail that meets the constitutional standard of care. And that's what we currently do not have. We have a jail that is unsafe for the inmates and unsafe for the jail staff. And that is unacceptable. I just wanted to reframe that slightly.
Yeah. And I think in that regard too, I think that's what I'm saying. I think it's the other aspects of all the other things that are driving up the operational cost of this project is the one thing that I don't want to speak for Councilor Wilds. I think that's the point that she's making, and that's a lot of the heartburn that some of us have. Councilor Deckard.
I was just going to say, number one, I do want to say I have beat the co-location drum extensively for a long time. And I am usually the last to change on something until you're absolutely running out of options. I will say that saying right now that maintaining the full-blown original co-location plan that we had, it is vastly overwhelmingly appearing to me that we have an inability to do that. I sometimes, when I think about what the state is permitting us to do, or figuring out what they're putting on pause or putting on play or putting on rewind, when I think about all that, I can't figure out if this county could lawfully in 1 month go buy a pack of chewing gum, let alone deal with an issue that has festered for some time. So because I get frustrated thinking about the legislature, and frankly, I'm tired of wondering about the legislature, but this is the law of the land, and we have to follow it. My thought is this: some of us have been on commissions and discussions on this issue alone since 2019, some even further back than that. Here it is, 2026. We don't have to completely divorce ourselves from all the values and notions that we had. We also don't have to marry every detail today, because gosh knows if we get something wrong or the legislature changes something in 12 seconds, which they're probably in session right now, that literally in 8 minutes you're already changing your plan. My questions kind of center around this. What could we do until circumstances and time in the community and law permitting changes things to where we're able to fully realize all those values? So for example, if in our system, having the system where there's minimal operational issues between the courts and the jail, if we could get to that eventually, that would be great. If we could get to that to where that's a fully realized, everything in our system is in its best spot downtown, that would be great too. But for now, what I'd like to figure out with Mr. Cockrell, Ms. King, with the auditor, with anybody that can assist with this, is what could we do to hit that constitutional care that Judge is talking so well about? Because it's clear that that is what has put us into the immediate vicinity of this. And I'm the last to just say it's down to that. And I think that much like anything else, we're gonna have to piecemeal build around this, fix around this, try to get this as right as possible. But for now, on this timeline, we're kind of sitting at this vast, giant, threatening issue that is not just the ACLU saying, we're being frivolous with this. They're talking about constitutional care. Not a person in here has run for office against that. I think also in that process, as you look at we're looking at this, we're making our folks as right as possible through existing resources we have for the present Justice Building and the other offices. I think that we get more closer to a solution, and we get to some form of action that minimizes any additional cost or burden to the taxpayer. I sometimes think when we're talking about this in the community, we're talking about the large original plan and its cost to taxpayers versus what it would take to do the constitutional jail by whatever method we would need to do that under any lawful way we could. I'm still not convinced we can fully do that with our current bonding capacity, but how do we do that and get to the next day? And I'm sorry to speak so long on that, but I think it kind of comes down to that, and you start building the solution around it.
So, Commissioner Thomas, and then I'll go to Commissioner Madeira next.
It sounds like folks are willing to pay lip service to, we want to be co-located. Of course, we all want a constitutional jail facility. And yes, we want to be co-located, but we can't afford it. And so we're not going to. And there are a lot of costs that come with that. A lot. That some are measurable and some are not. And I would really love to hear from the sheriff at this point about co-location, single floor, multi-floor facilities, because we haven't heard from you yet. If I might.
I'll just say real quickly to follow up on what Trent said. It's important now that we plan as best as we can to effectuate the values that we want to prioritize at this time. And those values are with us for the long term. They're inherent in the building we build. So we can try for co-location or whatever values we want to put into that building through our choice of property. The choices we make now have to dictate the choices we make later on. And I think we should look upon this as a marriage. This is not the time to speed date. It's not the time to quickly get to know a property. We still have to have the mindset that we're going to be with this property and this building for 50 years or more. I know Judge Stafford is going to know what I mean when I say this is like a covenant marriage.
So it's kind of hard for me to answer some of the questions that are being asked here. Everything that we thought of, the chief and jail commander, and I know I know it's been said that North Park is 100%. I get that part, but try to understand it from my point of view that everything that we've done so far was because of that location. Everything that we try to think of was to not repeat the mistakes of the past. Everything that we experienced so far in that jail is to not do it again somewhere else, or that the people that are going to replace us don't have to face what we're facing right now. And I truly understand when you're telling me what we could afford and not afford. But if you continue to go down this path as far as building up, that's what we have right now. If you lock us into a location that, God forbid, in the future we cannot expand, and I'm not saying we want to expand to put more people out there inside the facility. Right now, it's not constitutional. But what if we do have to put more people in there right now? Now what? Because right now, where we sit now, there are things coming down the pike that we haven't even had a chance to talk about, that within the blink of an eye, we're going to be overcapacitated in that facility, and henceforth, we're going to have to go ahead and put people in other locations, which means we're going to spend more money again. So I hear everyone's concerns, I hear everybody's interests. I assure you that what we do for a living, we've been doing this for a very long time. And it's hard for us to try to explain to people day in, day out what we're facing in that location. We know what we have, we know what we need. And my concern, and I already said it to other people here, if the goal is to meet the 15th, okay. But right now, just to be realistic here, we haven't decided on a location again because North Park is it's no longer consideration. I am still confused that we cannot afford North Park. I don't know. Because to make progress, we have to buy the property first, then build. It's logical that we don't have to build right away, but we do have to buy the property. All the money that was spent to get to this level. And what I'm hearing now, I don't see it happening that fast. I just don't. So I don't want to be the negative person in the room, but I am the person, the people behind me that in that building, in that jail, in that facility, day in, day out, wondering when the bottom's going to fall out. And it's just kind of disheartening to me that we've waited all this time. When I took over, over 3 years ago, I don't know what else clear I could say it and or demonstrate where we're at. And since that time, it's just gotten worse. Not better, just worse. And their opinion, and, renovate, and isn't. It doesn't work like that. It just truly doesn't. And if we're going to go and have a facility, a jail in one location and the judge in another one, yes, transportation is going to have to happen. Expensive. Yes, I'm going to need more vehicles, and yes, I'm going to need more bodies. I do not want to happen to what happened to the Marion County transportation individual that was killed because he was by himself. I'm not doing that. So is it going to be an increase in staff? Yeah. Yeah, there is. And then we're going to have to look at the fact that, hey, not everybody's suited for this job. So somebody. I have a liability for the county. So I don't know how else to express this, because one thing I do know, we're not going to please everybody. It's just not going to happen. It's just not. But in the real world, for us, we're the ones in that jail. So when we say something, I hope it carries a little weight, because we know what we're saying. We've been doing this for a very long time. And at the same time, we're thinking of the future. We don't want to pass up the time to someone else. It's going to be in our shoes at this point.
I was just trying to tell you to get to the microphone, just for it to pick up on cats.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I'll stop here. Everyone knows time is of the essence. In my mind, I'm still thinking, okay, what are we doing? Are we going to go ahead and just keep going the way we're going? Because nothing has changed so far at this point. What I do know is that North Park is not the park. It's no longer being considered. If that is the case, everything else is going to take time. It is what it is. So I'm not in a position to decide what's going to happen from this point forward. Council commissioners, that's your job. But I could tell you that based on what I experienced so far in the 3 years that I've been here, it took us that long to get to North Park, and now we're starting again. It's going to be a long process. So I'm not going to see the new jail. I know that. People behind me, maybe one might see the new jail, but we won't. I won't. So I'd like to put in perspective, what are we doing here? Because if we're talking about meeting the 15th, it's going to be a little bit differently. if we're talking about, okay, who wanted in the city limits, well, we're not making it the 15th.
Thank you. I just wanted to make 2 points. One is that I think the Board of Judges, and I think everyone here recognizes that with whatever location the council and commissioners pick and fund, that it won't all be built at the same time. I think we all recognize that. And that there will be a period of time, at least, where some things are not co-located. But I think it's really critical that we consider, and here's my second point, that there are not only costs of transportation in terms of personnel, in terms of vehicles, holding cells, et cetera, but there are also then going to be absolutely concomitant delays in court hearings, both obviously majority criminal, but also civil, and that there is a much increased risk of escape and harm to personnel, both inmate personnel and staff personnel, when we are transporting people. And so I really would like to see a good risk assessment and cost assessment of that done before you all proceed on that direction. Thank you.
I see that the chief deputy and jail commander have joined the table. Did either of you all have something to add to the conversation?
Well, I don't know if I have anything to add, but I guess a lot of this, someone's got to say some of these things, and I guess I'm the expendable one, so I'll be the one doing that. So I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I made some notes here, and I'll try not to read, but I think we need to speak here. I think it's important to talk about how we got here. And how we got here, we've been working on this for 3 years. I think we all were comfortable at one point, and I know Senate Bill 1 inserted itself pretty ugly into this process. But what happened here as of recently that prompted Ken Falk's letter to all of us and the letter that we passed out in the jail, that wasn't an accident. That was a result of the council's vote to eliminate North Park as a property. And I will say this, everybody that was there at that meeting was surprised by that. There was no talking of any of the stakeholders. Didn't talk to the sheriff, didn't talk to the judges, didn't talk to anybody. It was just an autocratic decision made by the council. So that's what put us here. There's been over $4 million spent on that process. So where's that money? I guess it's gone. So, now here we sit trying to be in collaboration here to try to figure this out. But that decision wasn't certainly collaboration. That was unilateral. And I'm confused by it because no one ever said anything to anybody about it until that day that I can recall. So I have asked this question, that if now we're running around looking for different properties, if that's what we're going to have to do here, which I completely don't understand, but if we're going to have to do that, look how long it took us to get to the decision on North Park, where there's a purchase agreement, there were environmental studies, there was, the design team has sat there for months and months designing a jail that is up in smoke. That exercise at this point was worthless. So now, where are we at? If that whole process has to be repeated, you just can't go to a realtor and say, hey, we'd like to buy 1, 2, 3, 4 Main Street. And he goes, okay, let's put a jail up there. All those steps have to be repeated. And if I read the letter from Ken Falk correctly, he specifically said that just saying, hey, we're thinking about, we're gonna go to look to buy some land here. His letter said, you're gonna have to have a specific plan by April 15th, or this lawsuit may go forward. And I can tell you that we passed out this very letter to every resident of our facility. And I can tell you this, that some of them have went back to the ACLU. More than one. It's been several. And in that letter, he puts, it did appear earlier this year, the county was finally making definitive steps to build a new jail. However, in late October, the Monroe County Council voted down a proposal to purchase a piece of property to be used for the new jail. Given the lack of process, I don't see any reason to continue to extend the private settlement agreement. He's very clear. So if we're going to go forward with different properties, I think everybody in this room better stipulate that the lawsuit's probably coming our way. We all better agree to that right here and now. And the sad part of it is, not everybody in this room is going to be a defendant in that lawsuit. I can tell you who it absolutely is going to be. It's absolutely going to be the sheriff, who has spent 3 years helping with this process. Kyle, well, okay, I'm getting there. Kyle, who has cleaned up the jail as best he can to make it as best he can, the commissioners for sure, and more than likely the council. Now, normally that, when I've seen, it's just the sheriff and the commissioners, but y'all may have walked yourself into this one. So here's what I would tell you. This letter is a very powerful thing. I've never seen anything like it in my 42 years in law enforcement, and I've not all that has been spent in a sheriff's office dealing with a jail. But for a long, long, long time, the people in that jail, their concerns and their cries to how that jail is, they've been ignored, they've been dismissed, they've been disregarded. But on January 29th at 8:30 in the morning, this letter was distributed. That's exactly when we did it, folks. And let me tell you something now, they have a voice, and they're not going to be ignored, and they're not going to be disregarded. I don't think we're going to hear a whimper from them. I'm going to hear a real loud, distinctive roar. And it's not going to come in a meeting like this. It's going to come in a federal lawsuit where most of the people sitting at this table are defendants. So I'll shut my little diatribe down here, but there have been studies, the Ken Ray study, I can't even remember them all, that all been paid for, and that's not even included in this $4 million. It's unsafe, it's outdated, and it can't be practically fixed. He lays it out in excruciating detail. So I'm going to go back to North Park, and I've heard that's a hard no, it's a hard no, it's a hard no. But again, that was a decision made by one body, and that was the council. And the next thing is, okay, so we find another property. Well, where does this end? If the property or the design, or isn't it, then all the council has to do is say, we're not funding it, we're back to square one again here. So I would like for someone to tell me, I just heard Mr. Cockrell say, we have the money to buy the land. That's the first step. That's the plan. That's how we get out of this lawsuit. If we come and say, we have a plan to purchase land. He said it in his letter. This will get put on hold. So I'd like someone to tell me why North Park was a unilateral no, and no one else has any say in it in this room. Nobody. It's no, no, no. It can't be the money. Jeff Cockrell said we have the money to do it.
I appreciate your words, and I appreciate the fact that you're at the table speaking, because I think what you're saying is important for us to contemplate. And I hadn't thought about it as seeming unilateral, and it was unanimous, but it wasn't as though we discussed our votes ahead of time, and it wasn't, I don't think, for the same reasons. my reasons for voting no, I happen to know just from listening, were different from some of my colleagues. And that has been, I think that is a problem. I think that is, and by problem, I don't mean it's bad. I think it is presenting a stumbling block in this process because there's no one solution to make council happy and council, go for North Park, because we all had variations on a theme and we just happened to hit that theme with our vote. I don't disagree that we're in for a lot of problem. I am very concerned about the deadline, and I'm willing to be here 3 times a week in the evenings doing whatever needs to happen to work through this. I really am.
Okay, my question is, maybe I can focus it a little bit more, that the purchase agreement was brought forward months and months and months ago. Everybody reviewed it. Sheriff, judges, the council, and everybody was,
Incorrect.
well, okay. The sheriff reviewed it. The council reviewed it. The commissioners reviewed it. That private settlement agreement wasn't a surprise to anybody. The purchase agreement wasn't a surprise to anybody. But I can tell you what, the vote in October sure was. It absolutely was. And I'm not trying to be a jerk here. I'm just trying to tell you, when we've invested 3 years in this and we were right there, and then all of a sudden we take a step back and we expect Ken Falk to just go, okay, we'll just extend it. And we've run out of runway here, and I don't know what the answer is.
So I'll give Judge Stafford an opportunity, and then I'll jump in.
Thank you so much. I would just like to state, again, speaking for myself only, not on behalf of the Board of Judges, that I would like to formally request, as I have before, both privately and publicly, that the Community Justice Response Committee be reinstituted so that we can have transparent and open public dialogue so that we can continue to be on the same page as we work through these extremely difficult issues. Democracy is messy. It's not fun to go through those meetings and have those public disagreements, but I think it's a necessary part of how we have those conversations and how we involve the community and the public in those conversations and how we do come to a consensus. I think the lack of those meetings is one reason why we are here now where we are. Thank you.
And I guess for me, I'm not, I guess everybody keeps saying that time is of the essence, and I keep hearing that everybody's like, thinking we're not going to make the April 15th deadline, not going to make April 15th deadline, we're not going to make it. I'm not going to say everybody, because maybe some people, maybe me being positive, Patty, I said in the last meeting, thinks that something like we can continue to move forward and we can do this if all of us are on the same page and trying to get to that point. And if we keep going back on the what ifs and the coulda, woulda, shouldas of 2025 and years past, instead of trying to work in this moment, I understand that people are highly disappointed, highly frustrated. All the whatever adverbs and verbs and things that you can describe of your reasons for why council voted the way that they get, I get it. I've heard it via email, text, phone calls, social media, all of the above. But instead of going the what ifs, why can't we move into the what is? Why can't we keep moving forward and also looking at the idea of trying to possibly look at other properties? Like Councilor Wilt said, we have a meeting tomorrow. I'm in this building today. I'm in this building tomorrow. If we really want to meet the goal that we want to meet, which is to knock this lawsuit off of us, then are we all willing to put egos and differences aside and really try to work towards that and get past the frustrations of the council votes? I keep hearing people say, oh, I'm past it. It's not personal. It's not any of that. Obviously, some people feel a kind of way because we keep having the same conversations. So if that is going to be the case, don't we owe our community an opportunity to keep moving forward, to keep looking at, other avenues of, if co-location is a big thing that everybody wants, my God, can we all try to figure out how we can try to make that work? Can council figure out the risk and operational costs to all the different things. It sounds like I hear next steps that council has to do, some other people have to do, and whatnot. But man, if we can put all of those next steps and we work in our little areas in our lanes for that or in that regard, and then come back to the collective body, then I think that we can try to move forward. But it's not going to get anywhere if we keep remaining stagnant in the decisions that the county council made. Again, I understand, and I'll see you here in a second. I understand that people are feeling all the feels, and I get it. But let's try to figure out how we can do a compromise, because I guess for me personally, and quite honestly, sometimes I feel like in county council, and I'm just speaking for myself, I don't hear a compromise sometimes. I hear what everybody continues to want, but I don't feel like there is a compromise of what we can try to figure out and how we can do this stuff together. And I just wish, for the greater good of Monroe County and for the residents that are housed at 301 North College Avenue right now, that we could really try to figure out how we can hear what you're saying, hear what the judges are saying, hear what county council is saying, and also hear what the commissioners are saying, and try to figure out how we can do this collectively together. And that's what I'll say, and I'll go to Commissioner Thomas.
Yeah, you make some salient points. I would add this. I think it's important, as Chief Deputy Parker points out, to understand the no votes, because that gets us to the next step, to understand the why. And what I'm hearing today from 2 council members, and if I'm wrong, correct me, is that you don't see co-location as possible because of the total overall cost and the lit that would have to be implemented in order to achieve that. I'm hearing that. And I think if that is the position, I think that needs to be said as a council at your meeting, whenever, if so that we understand that that's where things are going, because that to me is new information, in the sense that we've talked through a lot of different scenarios, co-location eventually, co-location never, but it is important that we understand, are we cutting off the possibility of co-location in the future, or do we want to co-locate, whether sooner or later, if the issue's money? And what about the multi-story jail facility? Because, to be downtown would probably require that, from what we've seen. And it's, the trade-offs are important to understand what people's priorities are. We're not all going to get what we want. None of us, okay? We're over it. Move on, right? We're all over that.
I hope so.
But we have to understand as a group what the priorities are. And I still don't have real clarity on that. And that would be a great thing. And I think, I'm not pointing fingers, I'm just saying, I think it's because there are 7 of you that we have less clarity from the council versus 3 commissioners, right? Versus a sheriff, right? So I think that's why. But if that's a discussion that could be had sooner rather than later by the council at one of your meetings, I think that would be really enlightening for all of us to understand where everybody's at. And it's not going to be a consensus, I'm sure. I'm sure it's going to be some sort of vote or resolution or something where we hear what the majority want to do. I just feel like that's the missing link, and it's not casting any negative aspersions on anything the council does. There are 7 of you. That's why we don't know. Because you did all present different reasons when you voted no in October. That's why I would really like that. And I think we all need that in order to move forward. That's just me.
So to clarify your ask of us, can you just clarify what it is that you really are asking?
I think the clarification is, what is the council willing to spend, tax and spend, to develop a facility? And if we have that number or a ballpark number, if it's a particular part of the lit, that would be fine because we can extrapolate from that what that will probably bring in revenue-wise. That would be good to know because then we can say, here are our limitations, what are we going to do? And we can then start talking about, which we still have to talk about co-location, and then single-story, multi-story. I feel like we need that information, and even if it's a range, whatever, but I know that it's hard because you all have to vote on stuff. There's 7 of you. So.
Okay.
And just to jump on that, what features of North Park made it a no that might make other properties also a no?
Yes.
It's my understanding that it's the commissioners who decide the size of the jail. Is that correct?
That's a really good question. That is something that we do in conjunction with the sheriff's department and with the council, because if the council doesn't fund it, it's not that size. If the sheriff says we need X number of beds, we certainly listen to that. Plus, we've got studies that told us the number.
Right. So Ken Ray's study in particular cited the number, and it was in the mid 400s, as I understand it, with an 80% capacity cap because you need that room to move inmates around and et cetera. So is that the commissioner's position at this point? I think that would be helpful for the council to know and for the board of judges to know.
There is a design presented from DLZ to the council and commissioners at a joint meeting. And there's also, and it's built, the whole thing is designed within a shell so that additional space can be added, hopefully never, but if we need be, decades down the road. And all of that information is in that, so.
Okay. But I think the question I'm trying to ask here is, what is the commissioner's goal for bed size, inclusive of all of the juvenile space, the mental health space, and et cetera, for the council to know for its planning purposes and for the board of judges to reflect upon and let us know if we need to get you any additional information because of statutory changes to pretrial release, bail, sentencing guidelines, et cetera. We need to have some idea of where you're looking.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
And I would say the study and the presentation pointed to about 400 beds. I think it was 404 beds as the base bid, and then up to, I think, 500 and some, or 1 or 2, or right around 500 as the building out all the shell space.
And that includes the 80% is part of that 404, but.
Thank you, I
There's
appreciate
a
that
range,
information.
but there is a range, and we can get you a copy of that final design. I thought everybody had gotten one.
I did. I wanted to know if we were looking at a new location, what would be the bed capacity that the commissioners are shooting for? Because that would tell us as a board of judges what we need to do to come back and let you know if we think there are any changes to that, since the Ray committee or the Ray study is now so old and there have been statutory changes.
Yeah, I think the statutory changes are going to be important, and I know that there's legislation relating to bail and there's potential ICE-related changes that we're all going to suffer under.
Well, and let me clarify. Of the 92 counties in Indiana, I worked with Senator Yoder's office last year to come up with this information. We have the 11th lowest rate of incarceration in the state, and that includes one county that doesn't have a jail. Mm-hmm. So our judges, our criminal court judges, have worked extremely hard to make sure that our incarceration numbers are as low as possible, not just because of this, but because of our overall philosophy on how we be judges. Mm-hmm. But we are not going to have some of that flexibility if some of this legislation passes, and that would have to change.
Yep, absolutely. So, but given that there is new legislation that may change some numbers, I don't see any reason to look at a different capacity just based on location, because if we need that many beds, 80% of 404, if we need that many beds, we need that many beds no matter where the jail is.
And that did include beds dedicated to medical needs and mental health as well.
Yep. Treatment.
Okay, so does anybody else have any? Okay, so I heard Commissioner Thomas that we have these here. Did you have a something in mind with the boards there?
No, they're just there as a reminder of what's still outstanding in terms of information. So,
Okay.
because there hasn't been a consensus developed on the questions of co-location, single floor, multi-floor facility for the jail itself.
Okay.
And so those are the outstanding questions from the last meeting. That's why we brought it back.
Okay.
Nothing that we have to do right now, but it would be good to address that
Got
at some
it.
point.
So, and what you're saying is, I guess, what you all, and I don't want to put any, words in the mouth here, but it sounds like you all are looking for council to tell you all what we would like to see, and then you will go forth.
Well, we still have other parties that we need to listen to, including the Board of Judges and the sheriff, and that's not legally who we have to listen to, but it's who we want to listen to. So, so we have to take what they want into consideration as well. And so, but at least we'd have a starting point. And it's not to say council sets a rate and that's it. I think it's the starting point for having that conversation about other facility locations, et cetera. Does that make sense? Okay. Thank you.
I would ask then if the Community Justice Response Committee is going to start meeting again, because that involved the sheriff and the Board of Judges and the council and the commissioners and the public, which are, I think, the key factors.
Be clear, that was not our decision, county council, to stop that one.
Understood.
So, I mean, I guess I look to the commissioners to figure out if that's something that we would like to go back and do.
We continue to discuss that, but there are so many aspects of where we are right now. And we are doing that facility discussion now here, which is great. And hopefully we're going to do it again soon. So at some point, if we see, yes, this is where we need to be, at some point, the committee will come back. But right now, we can't talk about all of the other things until we get moving on where we are clearly not in compliance with federal requirements. And I think that needs to be our focus, and that's why we're here. And I would like us to stay focused on that for now.
Well, and I guess, and I'll go to Commander Gibbons here in a second, but I guess to Judge Stafford's point, and then I hear your point, I'm a little confused now, because like I just heard you say, we need to hear from, our sheriff, and we need to hear from the Board of Judges. And I see that we have a table right now full of people here, and I understand not everybody can, speak, but I'm also going, then when is that a good time for us to have that conversation? Because I guess from my understanding, if we're having these joint meetings and we have the bodies that are here that we are able to listen to, why not have the opportunity to do that as we are gathering information, since council should be taking some of this information back and giving it back to you all. I think, as we are sitting here all in the same room, I'd like to hear what we need to hear. So if it's by way of resolution, that we can have the information that we need to do in a meeting instead of wasting the time getting another meeting, feeling like we're all saying the same different things in the same meeting, and then the time is winded down to April 15th. So I guess to that regard, is there anything else that anybody else needs to say that would be relevant to council so that we can do what we need to do? Because it sounds like we need to do what we need to do. I'm asking a question.
I have an answer, I think, as part of that, and this is the commissioner's thing. And we went through the pony training, and the CGRC meetings ended as a result of that pony training as we went into phase one of this build process. So we had multiple phases for this jail build process, and Scott Carnegie's here, and he could speak to some of that if he needs to, I guess. But phase one was getting everything together from the CGRC and moving into us breaking apart in different groups and preparing a blueprint for a facility. And then that third phase would be you guys involved as the council, and that's where we kind of hit the wall there. But it wasn't that we stopped talking. It's that we gathered the information that we did talk about and we broke off in groups so that we can work towards that build. And that was part of the DLZ process. So if that answers a little bit as to why we stopped, and that's not to say we can't open it back up, but if we decide to open up that process again, we're going to be talking about the same things, and then however long that's going to take, and then we're still going to be stuck on the property.
And to be fair, though, that's in my way of being on CJRC. I don't think that's why I stopped. And that's just me, because I feel like there were lots of personalities, lots of things. I think things that people felt like were getting out of hand. And one of the last meetings that we had, I said to myself and probably somebody else here, like, I feel like that was the last meeting we had. And then watching the commissioners meeting after the fact and realizing and getting an email after the fact that it was suspended without further notice and there was no other explanation besides that. So I think that is the reason. Again, I just preach to y'all about doing the coulda, woulda, shouldas. I don't want to do that. But if we're going to say stuff like that, I just want to make it clear, like, to some of us that were on CJRC, to me, that's not what it felt like.
We continue to discuss the validity and value of having those meetings continue and what they would be focused on. And right now, we need to focus on getting a property rather than talking about why CJRC is.
Well, and that's what I just said. And so that's what I'm saying, what else?
We continue to keep it.
So then again, as you had mentioned, like, our to-do is to hear from council to figure out things so we can all give that. Is there anything else, speak now and forever hold your peace, that folks haven't said to council that will be relevant to what it is that we have to do? Obviously, we are all trying to play well together, and we are all trying to do the thing, but it's frustrating if we're going to sit here and say, well, I'm disappointed in this and that and the other, and we're not hearing what we need to hear. Somebody tell us something so we can figure out our next steps. Thank you. Judge Fawcett.
So I understand the need for collaboration and wanting to do it. But I fear we are attempting to collaborate ourselves into saying 2 + 2 = 5, when the needs and the facts and the way the system is set up just doesn't lend itself to that. As a criminal court judge, I try and visualize what it would be like to have a jail and then have 1 or 2 courtrooms there. And I can't get my head around as to how that would work because of the process of how a case comes to be. So, and I may not be the best to educate, and if other judges have more to add, feel free to jump in. A defendant gets arrested, or a person gets arrested. That report gets sent to the prosecutor's office, who has to review it to decide whether or not they want to file charges. If they decide to file charges, that report has to get sent up to a judge for review to determine whether or not there's probable cause. If probable cause is found, charges get filed. Then the defendant is brought down for an initial hearing, where they would appear in front of the judge to be informed of what the charges have been filed, what the range of penalty is, and what their rights are. Prior to that, they would also have to partake in a pretrial release interview. They would also, so that involves, so far we have a police agency, we have the jail, we have the prosecutor's office, and we have a criminal court judge. We then also have to bring in somebody within the probation department to conduct a pretrial interview assessment to determine what risk and what recommendation they have regarding release. We have to have a public defender at the initial hearing. We also have to have a representative from the state of Indiana. So we have at least 5 different agencies, branches of government, that have to partake in this process. And I cannot get my head around how that happens. And in the meantime, if it's my duty week, if it's my CO9's week to handle the initial hearings, I'm not handling it just for one court. I'm handling it for the 3 other criminal courts. So my staff has to wait to get all of the information from all the other courts about any inmate that court might have. So if someone's arrested on a probation violation and it's not my court, we have to get it, say, from CO5 or CO2 or CO3. And there are deadlines and timelines in which all of this paperwork has to get brought together and brought to the court who is handling the initial hearings for that time, for that day. And I am telling you, even within the departments that are in the same building, we at times are pushing that timeline, that deadline, to get all of the paperwork, all of the documentation to where it needs to go. And so I say all of this just to emphasize, when the Board of Judges recommends co-location, it's not just because it would be really convenient and that my staff wouldn't have to drive down the way and then find a place to park. It's impractical because of how we are set up. The 4 criminal courts are so independent on each other because of the monthly calendar. If it was just my court and it was just my defendants, then maybe I could get by with just having one courtroom down in the jailhouse. But I cannot get my head around how a jail would function with 1 or maybe 2 courtrooms available. And I think ultimately that's, again, I don't think we can collaborate ourselves out of the need for co-location. And so I guess I kind of echo what some from the sheriff have said. We have been there, we have done it, we have studied it, we have made our recommendations. And it seems to me that, you know, unfortunately for you guys, you're in the difficult position of having to parse out and cut the extra fluff of what people might really want for a criminal justice system. But we're at a point where I don't know how many different ways it could be said. I can't think of a system the way we have it set up right now with the monthly rotation that the criminal courts have where we can't be co-located. So if we can educate any more on that, I would love to try and help do it, but it truly is, I would encourage, and I know some of you guys have come and watched court, but I would really come and watch my office, come and watch my court staff, and watch the number of people who have to come and go for one day, you know, to get all of the information and the paperwork that we need from all of the players that are involved.
Just to follow up on that, because there, and I mean, you make excellent points, and I don't think you mentioned the clerk in there, but the clerk's in there too, because it hits everybody. It hits every unit in the justice realm, and thank you for that. I guess the question I would have, and maybe this is something I don't know if someone on the Board of Judges can do, or if it's something the county council staff can look at, but there are courts that are separate from jails in Indiana, and I'd be curious to see their staffing levels and how they manage that, and what that cost is. I mean, because we talk about the staffing side for the jail and the dangers and the costs and the risks, but we don't have that info, and maybe there's something that could be put together on a rough scale, using Gateway or something to give us a sense of how much more it costs to have in terms of personnel on the justice side outside of the jail facility, because I don't know what that number is. It would be bad and dangerous and time consuming no matter what we do. But I think there are costs there that we haven't discerned.
All right. So as we are winding down, council colleagues, it sounds like we have some work that we have to do. And that's all I'll say about that. So, any other parting, and I guess I always like to end with next steps, so it sounds like our next steps is that. And then we will do what we will with that.
And we have some information we're going to be providing next week.
Next week, when?
To the group. Executive session.
Oh, okay, got it. All right.
So we have our homework too. We have our homework
all
too.
the meetings. Okay. All right. So if there is nothing else that is needing to be said, that we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
you.